I think it would be helpful for people that are listening to you that may not be familiar with how you grew up and the views that you had at the time into how you view things today. I think it would be helpful to go through, why that book was so special to you and what that book was, first of all, what it kind of symbolized in your shift in thinking.
Sure. So I grew up in a very small town in Brazil. Brazil is a very Catholic country. I would say that 80% of the population is Catholic. Everybody that I knew was Catholic. My whole family, we went to church. I was baptized, went to Catholic school. And in school, I learned that, the world was created in 6 days and the whole story in the Bible. I think there was, the more I think about it, I'm sure they mentioned evolution, but it was never as like, oh, this actually happened. It was just, oh, and there is this theory of evolution, but it's not really a thing. So I grew up with that mindset. I actually got into a different religion. I don't think I've ever spoken about this, but I actually got into a different religion that's very popular in Brazil. It's called spiritualism.
Spiritualism.
I think that's the name. And it was created by a French man called Allan Kardec. I think it's his name. Mm-hmm. And it's basically Catholicism with reincarnation. So I used to believe that, my spirit had reincarnated several lives. And I don't know, I got really into that religion at one point. Anyway, so grew up there, moved out after I finished high school to start modeling. And, I just was religious. I believed everything that I had learned in school because, of course, I didn't think that everybody around me was lying. And then fast forward, living in the United States, my cousin sent an email one day. It was 2009. He sent me an email asking if I could bring him a book whenever I went back to Brazil at the end of the year. And I said, sure, of course. Mm-hmm. And he sent the book to my house and I just left it there in a box. And then one day I was like kind of bored and I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this book. And I remember sitting down and reading it and getting goosebumps and thinking, oh my God, how did I not know any of this? And the book was The Greatest Show on Earth by Richard Dawkins. It's a whole book about evolution. And yeah, that set me on a path of knowledge. I went on Amazon right after it and searched for all the related books and started buying a ton of different books on popular science.
So that book was the kind of the beginning of you taking a deeper dive into science and then eventually nuclear energy.
Yeah, of course. So that book was, kind of it really opened my brain to this whole universe that I didn't know existed. And then I started learning about, other areas. I've always been fascinated by psychology. So I got really into evolutionary psychology for a little bit. Then I got into a little bit of, astronomy, just reading science, I guess, just learning how to learn. I would classify that period in my life. And because I was modeling at the time and not everybody in the fashion industry is interested in having these conversations, I created a Twitter account just so I could follow the scientists and start meeting like-minded people. And one of the people I started following was Carolyn Porco. She is a NASA scientist. She worked with Carl Sagan back in the day. And I think it was 2015 or 2016, she tweeted something about molten salt thorium reactors, which was just like this new type of nuclear reactors.
Molten salt thorium reactor?
Yeah.
And
I'm laughing now because
that's different than the nuclear reactors we have now.
Yeah, slightly different, but yeah, it's just like a variation because you can use different types of fuels and you can use different types of coolants. And yeah, so that was something that she tweeted about back in the day, and I got super curious. But of course, I Googled it and it was just impossible basically to understand. Especially at the time, there wasn't a lot of accessible information. So I just got that curiosity back then, but didn't really dedicate the time to learn about nuclear energy in general. So fast forward to 2019, which was, in my view, a horrible year. And now I'm like, 2019 was actually great. Take me back.
Yeah. Well, what was bad for you about 2019?
I just remember there were a lot of what seemed to be a lot of natural disasters that people traced back to climate change. So the ones that I paid the most attention to were the fires in Australia and the Amazon, of course, being from Brazil, that felt very personal to me. And I remember seeing this video of a native Brazilian woman crying. I'm also partly native Brazilian, so I don't know, there's like even more of a personal connection. And her whole village was destroyed by these fires. And just knowing what what native Brazilians have gone through, and now, losing their homes because of climate change just broke my heart. And I felt compelled to use my platform to do something about it.
Yeah.
So I started reading, what would take to quote unquote solve climate change. And of course, nuclear always comes up. And then, I remember that tweet back in the day by Carolyn Porco and just started doing some research on nuclear energy. And I don't know, I would like to hear your experience, but my experience was once you start looking at the data, you just feel like you've been fooled your whole life.